Qigong as a spiritual practice. That is going to be the topic of this episode of Qi Life. So this one is another request from someone who watches the vlog. And I will actually read their message that they sent me a little bit later on so that I can, make sure I cover the different things that they asked about, and I think it'll be relevant in context a little bit later on. If you've been following the vlog for a while, you'll probably recall that quite recently, one of the vlogs I made was about whether Qigong is compatible with Christianity. In that vlog, I also talked about other sort of major religions as well, and how Qigong can be compatible with any of them. Quite some time ago, I also made another vlog about Qigong in and of itself not being a religion. And of course, that is part of why it can be compatible with any religion, because Qigong itself is not a religion. But at the same time, Qigong has been used amongst the practices of quite a few different religions and spiritual belief systems. And so I guess this topic is the flip side of that emphasis of Qigong not being a religion, and how Qigong could be considered to be a spiritual practice, and maybe how it can, support spirituality in and of itself, and how that can potentially mesh in with and support different religious beliefs that people may have. So I guess to begin with, it helps, or it might help, to discuss and think a little bit about what do people even mean by spiritual. So I had a brief conversation recently, which was not too uncommon. Like, this is kind of an example of the way different conversations often may go, where I was talking to someone and they asked what I do, and I said that I teach Qigong, and they didn't really know what Qigong was. So they asked, well, what is Qigong? And I told them a little bit about it. And I said that, Qi means energy, Gong means work or skill, so Qigong is working with energy, developing skill with energy. And their response was, oh, so it's a spiritual practice. And, for myself, I'm kind of like that kind of throws me off a little bit, because I'm going to get to how Qigong can be a spiritual practice later on. But for the most part, the way I focus on and work with Qigong, I'm not really thinking about it as a spiritual practice. And certainly just working with energy, I don't consider to necessarily be spiritual. I consider it to be something that's very, very practical. There's all sorts of different aspects of our energy, the way we have electricity flowing through our bodies, through our nerves and within the cells of our bodies, the way we generate heat, the way we move pressure through our body and distribute weight and force, and all these sorts of things, which are all about working with energy. And then we use this to make ourselves healthy and to be more efficient, and all of these things. And that's just a really practical thing. So I don't tend to think of just working with energy as being spiritual, but to someone else who maybe this is not the way they think about things in life, just the mention of energy is like, oh, it's spiritual. So different people have a different threshold maybe of what they'd consider to be spiritual. I just consider that to be practical. Again, I'll come back to how Qigong can be considered to be a spiritual practice. So if we have a spectrum where down one end we have just, the threshold is just energy, therefore it's spiritual, right down this end. At the other end, you might have other people who really only consider things to be spiritual insofar as they fit in with very specific religious beliefs. And they go, okay, that's spiritual. Everything else is, something else. And then there's some space in the middle where you might consider, I've probably used this example before, but someone could consider watching a sunrise to be a spiritual experience. Now, why is that spiritual to them? Or not just the sunrise. They might, looking at the stars at night could be a spiritual experience, or, any number of different things. Now, why would that be spiritual? Because the sunrise, the stars at night, whatever it is, are commonplace, everyday experiences. They're, in many ways, very much a physical experience. The sun is rising, and the light's refracting as it, and the earth is turning, and that's bringing different stars into view. It's a very physical experience. And yet some people will consider that to be spiritual in a way. And I think a big part of what potentially makes that spiritual is the way it can invoke someone to dig down to a deeper sense, and maybe even a deeper understanding of their place within the world, within the universe, and maybe even down to their own identity. And so I think this is maybe where the middle ground is. It's not just about real practical things. It's not necessarily about specifically religious beliefs, but an ability to get to what we'd normally think of, I guess, as a deeper understanding of the big picture. And part of that is the big picture of ourselves, our own characteristics, and understanding of the world around us, and so on. And in that sense, I think you can think of Qigong as quite a spiritual practice, because the nature of Qigong and of working with energy, and while I say, look, this is a really practical thing, as we get more into that and we focus on the finer details of that energy, it's quite a subtle thing. And to really understand that energy, it means understanding the interaction between many things. Just within ourselves, understanding the energy that flows through us. Yeah, there's all the things I mentioned before, the activity of the nerves, the cellular respiration, the postures and tension in muscles, and, all these sorts of things that affect our energy flow in really practical ways. But it also means to understand the interaction between our mind and our body. Because all these things going on in our body, that they're not just a product of our body, because our mind is directing and influencing them. And then as part of that then comes in our emotions and things as well, and how that's influencing the energy. And so, again, I would put that at quite a practical level, but this means we're looking at the effect of multiple things to understand what's going on, and there's quite a lot of nuance to that, and it gives us a richer understanding of ourselves. Going further than that, as we dig even deeper, and particularly as we dig into our understanding of our connection with the world around us, because we're looking at, well, what's going on in the energy around us and how does that affect us as well. As we tune in more subtle, more nuanced ways, this can lead to really quite rich insights about the nature of life itself, the patterns that we see, the different roles we may play. And this can then even get into experiences, and real experiences, that very much would fit within what most people would call spiritual. How should I describe some of those? Things like, well, again, insights that come not purely necessarily, or they don't seem to come purely, as you'd think, from observation, but also as messages you could think of from the world around you, from the universe around you, but in a very subtle way. And that's from all parts of the world around you, from nature itself, from trees, from the mountains, from the air, from the sea. A sort of communication goes on there as we recognize the living nature of all that's around us. And that includes with other people as well, a communication on a deeper level beyond what we'd normally think of as communication, beyond speaking, beyond even body language, things like that. A a communication at a much deeper, more subtle level, and a recognizing of these deeper qualities. And again, and that can get into other things, again, I won't get into so much, but which, again, many people would consider, yeah, definitely to be spiritual. But these come as a result of the practice, of tuning in more and more to how everything works together, and focusing on energy, because energy comes as a result of everything, working together, helps us to tune in a finer, more subtle way. And this develops over time. And so, yeah, in that sense, I think Qigong really can be a spiritual practice. Again, not that it's religious in any way, or doesn't need to be. Some people could practice it in a religious way. But that it fine-tunes our senses, our understanding, our ability to look at things as a whole, and our ability to dig down to a deeper level of understanding. And when you do that, of course, that can then feed into whatever religious belief someone has. That can actually give them a richer understanding that potentially supports that religious belief. It gives them a richer experience of their religious belief as they tune into things at a deeper level. At the same time as well, some people may just experience that as their own experience and want to explore that without necessarily needing to have a religious belief to frame it, but just purely as what they experience in life, and perhaps, again, spiritually, as they get a deeper understanding of themselves and the world around them. All right, so I did mention I'd read the message and see if I'd covered off what they asked about here. So let's see here. Okay, so this is what they wrote. They said, I have followed various traditions on my spiritual journey, which knowingly began a very long time ago. And one aspect that endures is shamanism. Knowing that Qigong has Taoist roots and that this in turn has shamanistic roots, my question is, what is your perspective on Qigong as a spiritual practice? For me, working mindfully and being aware of energies as I practice and teach, and having a love of nature and the elements, both in nature and in traditional Chinese medicine, it is all there. But I'd like to know what this means to you, as I'm sure it is very meaningful from your heart-centered approach. Yeah, so in that message, she connects it particularly to shamanism. And I think in many ways that can sum up how Qigong is a spiritual tradition, depending on how you think of shamanism. Because you can think of shamanism as being like, superstitions, and a superstition is essentially like a false belief that you sort of give power by your belief in it. You could think of shamanism that way. Or you could think of shamanism as simply forming a deeper connection to nature, and then understanding with that, working with that, respecting that. In that case, yeah, that fits pretty well in terms of understanding how Qigong is a spiritual belief. And there's, all sorts of really interesting things that can come out of that. And what I really like about that is that it's your own experience. It doesn't have to be someone telling you what you should experience, telling you what you should believe. But you're able to little by little have your own understanding and perception of things at a deeper level. And again, many people, that's enough, just having their own experience. For some people, that might be something that then supports them within a religious belief as well. Anyway, I hope I covered that topic well enough, at least for now. There's, potentially lots of things you could get into in terms of like the nature of different spiritual experiences that people can have. But for the most part, I prefer to let people discover some of that by themselves, because to me, it really is about having their own experience of them. And then as they discover different things, experience different things, often there can be some explanation or understanding of what it is they're experiencing by, understanding Qigong and how it works. And, that can be helpful. But I think it's best most times to just let people experience things for themselves. All right. That was the topic today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have, please like, comment, subscribe, share, all those good things. And I look forward to seeing you in another one soon.